Hello YouTube, and welcome to another Elder Scrolls lore video. Today we're talking about the second era queen of Eleanor and Auridon, Queen Ayrenn. This is likely one of the most requested Elder Scrolls Online lore topics that I've had over the years, and with her story likely concluded for now, I am now finally confident that I can do a video on her and that it won't get outdated in a month or so, like with most of my Elder Scrolls Online videos. So, let's immediately get into it. Ayrenn Arana Altmeri, or just Queen Ayrenn for short, was born on the 5th of Second Seed in the year 555 of the Second Era. She was the first legitimate daughter of King Hiddelith and Kinlady Tuidan, and her birth was cause for a 55-day long celebration on the Somerset Isles. According to a 2012 lore post by Zenimax, her name was chosen by following the Scrolls of Praxis, which are precedents available to the kings and queens of Somerset Isles to base their decisions on. Several years later, she would also get a younger brother who was named Naaman and was the second and, as far as we know, final child of King Hiddelith. Not much is known about Ayrenn's youth, other than that she was quite nimble, quick-witted, and that she would spend a lot of time with a pet Indrik named Lotus, which she's gotten from her father. In addition to that, we know that she would often take the initiative to go on field trips without necessarily telling her educators and then disappear for several days. When she would often return with new knowledge and skills that Altmeri princesses general wouldn't necessarily have. Altmeri tradition dictates that all heirs to the throne have to study at the College of Sapiarchs from age 8 for the following 3555 days of their life, and Ayrenn was to be no different. As she grew up, the date of her admittance into the College of Sapiarchs approached, but as that day came, she mysteriously disappeared before she would start to take her studies. I personally deem it likely that she just ran away, but we never get the exact reason for her disappearance. But I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that she simply wanted to see more of the world before ascending to the throne, and therefore ran away. I say this because by the time the royal family got wind of her disappearance and started searching for her, she had already started her journey across Tamriel at age 8. First, she lived with the Rennie elves of Balfira and trained with them in combat. After that, she journeyed through Skyrim, Cyrodiil, Morrowind and Hammerfell, allegedly hunting for frost trolls, riding bears, exploring dwarven ruins, sailing with pirates, reading indigo scrolls and dancing with nereids, and flying on giant kites. But it was also during these travels that she formed a distrust for humans after having contact with the rulers of the Cyrodiilic Empire at the time. Specifically, her contact with Abner Tharn left a sour taste in her mouth. During this time, nobody really knew of her whereabouts back home, and they eventually gave up on ever finding her again, and her brother, Prince Naaman, was then picked to become the new heir to the throne and entered in the Sapiarch's College in her stead to study the full length that is required for a ruler. But when her father, the king, died, she returned to her homeland to claim the throne. This grand return was unexpected to basically everyone in the Somerset Isles, but as the first legitimate child of the former king, she still had her birthright, and she was soon crowned at the age of 27, which is an extremely young age for an Altmer queen. This is all very unorthodox, and this unorthodox coronation and very unorthodox queen in general sparked rebellion in the Somerset Isles. A group of those who opposed her coronation and subsequent rule, called the Veiled Heritance, formed in the Somersets, and this group became exceptionally powerful when Queen Ayrenn, together with King Camoran Eredon and the Main of Elsewhere, formed the first Altmeri Dominion, an alliance built to help one another, ultimately rid Tamriel of the Daedric threat, and ultimately conquer Cyrodiil and the White Gold Tower, returning the rule over Cyrodiil to the rule of the Elder races. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because you see, after Queen Ayrenn formed the distrust for humans, she concluded that humans might be too young and too rash to determine the Tamriel's fate. This belief was strengthened by the fact that it was the folly of humans, specifically Imperial Emperor Varen Aquilarius, that Molag Bal could initiate the Plane Melt, which is basically the whole Daedric invasion that's going on in the events of Elder Scrolls Online. She wanted to free Tamriel from this invasion of Daedra, but concluded that the High Elves were far too few in numbers to solve this crisis alone, and thus, through diplomacy, she founded the Altmeri Dominion. Somerset, Valenwood and Elsewhere, working together as equal partners to bring back peace to Tamriel. The problem here is, however, that many High Elves didn't particularly like the fact that Queen Ayrenn elevated the Bosmer and Khajiit to an equal level to High Elves, and thus the Veiled Heritance, the group opposing her rule, grew in numbers, with Elven supremacists joining the group because Ayrenn's forming of the Dominion. What also didn't help is that Queen Ayrenn didn't much care for old rituals and traditions, as she wasn't educated like a usual queen would. She only did those rituals begrudgingly because her people found them important, while she herself faced the life more as a warrior and adventurer. She was also very much chastised by many on the Somerset Isles, specifically Alinor, for allowing other races than High Elves on their shores. All this also added to the Veiled Heritance' power in the end. This group is eventually faced during the Altmerry Dominion questline of Auridon, and in the end it turns out that the fiancé of Ayrenn's brother, Naaman, was the leader of this organization. Naaman himself claims to be fully innocent, and of course Ayrenn believes him. And of course, she was wrong, as after the Veiled Heritance was defeated on Auridon, she travels to Valenwood in order to get herself confirmed as a worthy leader for the Dominion at the ancient orrery there. Here, Prince Naaman eventually betrays his sister and reveals that he is in fact very spiteful over the fact that she returned and that his claim to the throne was nullified. You're then forced to kill Naaman as the player, and then Ayrenn can finally step into the orrery, and then she receives a vision that she can make her dream of Tamriel under Altmerry rule a reality. This strengthens her resolve, and together with the player of the Elder Scrolls Online, manages to unite all of the Altmerry Dominion after driving out the lost Imperial forces from Arrentia's Reaper's March region, and also helping with the choosing of a new main for elsewhere. Once the Daedric crisis is solved due to the actions of the player during the Elder Scrolls Online's main questline, Ayrenn would continue to fight to conquer Cyrodiil and bring Tamriel under the rule of the Mirror races. We don't know what happened to Queen Ayrenn after the events of the Elder Scrolls Online. Most likely she remained the ruler of the Somerset Isles for quite some time after the events of ESO. My personal guess is that when the first Altmerry Dominion dissolved, she probably stepped down. We at least know that the second Altmerry Dominion, founded roughly 300 years after the first, was led by a king of Alinor and no longer by Queen Ayrenn. But what exactly her fate is, we don't know, unfortunately. That said, I do think that it's quite an interesting character, and for all terms and purposes, she's a fan favorite in the Elder Scrolls Online community. But I think that considering her backstory as a young and adventurous queen, she was always destined to become a fan favorite. That said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I hope you'll return to the channel next week when the next Elder Scrolls lore video launches. Now, before I end the video, allow me to vocally thank my top patrons, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Metaloid1v1, Hammer of the Scots, Gabriel Binda, Mr. Christmas and Mr. Parna. These wonderful people, along with all the others on screen, keep the channel afloat, and I'm very grateful for it. With that behind us, I'll see you all next week in the next Elder Scrolls lore video. I hope I'll feel a bit better then. Bye bye.